31 hours north of the Gulf waters. The first strike doesn't register like any ordinary detonation. It reverberates like a massive iron fist slamming into steel. A second unmanned American attack vehicle, operating beneath the threshold of conventional radar detection, finds its mark. A breach opens along the right flank. It carves through the vessel's trail and slams into the starboard stabilizer with devastating accuracy. 2 million barrels of unrefined petroleum shudder under the force, sending a deep percussive wave rippling through the entire hull framework. The massive tanker begins tilting, 5 degrees in under 2 minutes. Inside the operations hub, every monitor flashes emergency red. The doctrine of naval engagement has just been permanently rewritten. This is no act of opportunistic piracy. This is a deliberate kinetic strike, authorized by the naval arm of a state-backed Revolutionary Guard. In mid-March of 2026, International Wire Services confirmed that a strategically vital American-flagged vessel was besieged by fast attack craft. But the flames swallowing the upper deck are merely the distraction, a theatrical opening act. The real assault is far deeper. They have transformed their coastal perimeter into an impenetrable bastion designed to draw nuclear-capable guided missile submarines and advanced attack submarines into the dangerously shallow channels of the Gulf, waters barely 60 meters deep. The breaking headlines are choreographed theater. The regime believes it has cornered the superpower. What it doesn't realize is that every maneuver has already been anticipated by a vastly superior intelligence framework. The real conflict isn't fought with fire, it's fought through systematic dismantlement. Stay focused. What comes next will reshape how you understand global dominance. The so-called impregnable barrier is about to be decoded. To grasp the audacity of this provocation in early 2026, one must first appreciate the architecture behind it. This is not some undisciplined militia. It is a deliberate asymmetric stranglehold strategy, refined over 4 decades. After studying the lessons of the 1991 coalition air campaign and the 2003 ground invasion of a neighboring state, the Revolutionary Naval Guard internalized a fundamental truth: they will never win a dogfight against a 5th-generation stealth fighter, nor prevail in a direct exchange with an advanced guided missile destroyer. So instead, they converted the narrow strait into a layered anti-access zone, a nightmare of overlapping denial systems. The cornerstone of this forbidden perimeter is an advanced indigenous air defense platform. Its primary surveillance array scans over 240 nautical miles of airspace, roughly the distance between 2 major eastern seaboard cities, tracking up to 300 aerial contacts simultaneously. If an Allied pilot crosses the engagement threshold, the fire control radar achieves lock before the aircraft's own sensors can even register the coastline. The system's high-velocity interceptor, reaching speeds beyond Mach 6, is engineered to strike at altitudes exceeding 100,000 feet, where the atmosphere is too thin for evasive maneuvering. It isn't merely a shot. It is a total denial of the sky. Beneath this upper canopy, medium-altitude hunter systems operate across multiple frequency bands, creating a layered saturation of the electromagnetic spectrum. If a carrier's electronic warfare suite attempts to jam one signal, the alternate frequency remains clean. It is the tactical equivalent of trying to follow a single conversation in a room where 20 radios blare on different channels. Deep inside mountain ranges, reinforced tunnels with blast-resistant doors shelter anti-ship cruise missiles, derivatives of foreign-supplied designs capable of sea-skimming flight profiles. Protected beneath thousands of tons of solid granite, these sites are virtually invisible to orbital surveillance. The plan was to force advanced attack submarines into the acoustically noisy, perilously shallow Gulf waters, where midget submarines and heavyweight torpedoes waited like dormant predators on the seabed. It was a geographic checkmate, brilliant in concept. But the architects omitted one critical variable. The opposing force didn't just possess superior weaponry, it possessed the master key. 03:45 hours, the war room beneath the Capitol. Encrypted satellite feeds deliver real-time telemetry. The situation is a tactical knot with no clean thread to pull. The stricken tanker continues to list, hemorrhaging crude into one of the planet's most critical energy corridors. Meanwhile, the Unified Combatant Command confronts the densest operational fog in a decade. The senior leadership faces a binary dilemma, a calculated vulnerability exploited with clinical precision by the adversary. If surface forces deploy to secure the vessel and contain the environmental disaster, they sail directly into the engagement envelopes of coastal cruise missiles concealed within mountain tunnels. If stealth fighters launch from the carrier, they enter airspace blanketed by overlapping air defense layers. But the truest nightmare is acoustic. Pushing a nuclear attack submarine into these waters is the anti-submarine warfare equivalent of hiding an elephant in a glass corridor. At barely 160 feet of depth, the thermal and acoustic signature of a nuclear reactor becomes a homing beacon for the passive hydrophone arrays seeded across the seabed. A single miscalculation and a $300 million marvel of engineering could be struck by a comparatively primitive torpedo, triggering an unprecedented nuclear and ecological catastrophe. If we fire, we ignite a total regional conflagration. If we withdraw, we surrender sovereignty of the seas to anarchy. For a fleeting moment, the superpower appears paralyzed by geography. The adversary believes that our fear of escalation is our greatest vulnerability, and that their wall cannot be breached. Let us discuss strategic realities, not rhetorical posturing. The doctrine of graduated response is active, and our reaction windows are measured in milliseconds. 2 folders rest on the table. One contains a diplomatic containment strategy. The other contains immediate authorization for the systematic erasure protocol, the premise that freedom of navigation is restored solely through absolute technological supremacy and the strategic humiliation of the aggressor. 03:45 hours. While the regime still attempts to process the smoke rising from the stricken tanker, the sky above the strait fills with phantoms. These are not heavy bombers. They are a meticulously orchestrated ballet of electronic deception, and they mark the beginning of the end. From the flight decks of the carrier strike group, advanced tactical jets catapult dozens of miniature air-launched decoys into the darkness. Each is a small jet-propelled drone weighing less than 300 pounds. It carries no warhead, only a sophisticated signature augmentation package. Through advanced transponder manipulation, a single inexpensive drone can distort enemy radar returns to mimic the cross-section of a heavy strategic bomber or an entire formation of stealth fighters. The coastal commanders, already rattled by cascading communications failures, take the bait. They authorize launches from the clifftop batteries. High-velocity interceptors scream skyward. The engineering of the trap is elegant in its simplicity. The adversary is firing gold-plated missiles worth millions against expendable plastic ghosts. Within an hour, they have incinerated a staggering sum in irreplaceable air defense assets without downing a single manned aircraft. But the true electronic sledgehammer hovers 50 miles offshore. Specialized electronic attack aircraft carry next-generation jamming pods that don't merely broadcast noise. They inject precisely tailored false signals directly into the processing architecture of the coastal surveillance radars. It is the equivalent of shining a 1,000,000-lumen searchlight directly into the eyes of a sentry standing in total darkness. And then comes the technical death spiral. Anti-radiation missiles track enemy radar emissions and fly directly toward the transmitting antenna at twice the speed of sound, guided by inertial and satellite navigation. If the operator shuts down the radar to hide, the missile memorizes the exact coordinates and continues its terminal flight. If they keep the radar active, they die by the beam. If they deactivate it, they die by the missile's memory. There is no correct answer. 03:25 hours. Fort Meade. While the regime celebrated the visual spectacle of the burning tanker, inside a windowless facility thousands of miles away, the military cyber command executed the true opening move of the dismantlement. It was not an explosion that sealed the fate of the Revolutionary Naval Force, it was a code sequence. Using cryptographic access provided by Allied regional intelligence services and fiber optic penetration points managed by a close European signals intelligence partner, operators injected a phantom feedback loop into the adversary's integrated air defense network. The sophistication of this intrusion was terrifying in its elegance. The malicious code did not shut down enemy radars. Doing so would have triggered fail-safe reserve protocols. Instead, it overwrote the threat identification libraries. For the operators monitoring their screens, the Gulf appeared in absolute tranquility. No contacts, no threats, perfect calm. In physical reality, fifth-generation stealth fighters were transiting directly overhead, invisible, not only because of their engineered low observable airframes, but because the enemy's own software had been instructed to erase them from existence. Simultaneously, the Allied Signals Agency executed a surgical denial of service attack against the encrypted satellite uplinks connecting the Naval Guard's command nodes. In an instant, the midget submarines waiting on the seabed lost all contact with their controllers. Their passive sonar arrays received only ghost contacts, phantom signatures of vessels that did not exist. They were paralyzed in total darkness, while the surface above them began to boil. 04:30 hours. The hammer falls from the deep. As the electronic warfare campaign finished blinding the remnants of the coastal defense grid, 80 advanced cruise missiles, launched from a guided missile submarine lurking hundreds of miles away, reached the shoreline. The synchronization was absolute. These weapons did not seek the reinforced concrete blast doors. They targeted pressure points. Using terrain-matching correlation systems that compared high-resolution three-dimensional digital models against real-time terrain data, the cruise missiles navigated directly into the ventilation shafts and service access points of the mountain tunnel complexes. The mountains were not demolished. They were converted into sealed crypts. The anti-ship missiles that were supposed to saturate the Naval Task Force were crushed beneath thousands of tons of collapsed rock before their rocket motors could even ignite. The final blow arrived from the western flank. Instead of committing expensive manned aircraft, Allied ground forces employed a scalpel-like approach. Mobile rocket artillery units launched precision-guided munitions from wheeled launchers positioned across the border. Each rocket dispensed tens of thousands of pre-formed tungsten fragments, shredding the satellite communication antennas and command relay stations that connected the regime's fast attack craft to their shore-based controllers. The unmanned surface vessels still circling in the water instantly became digital zombies, executing meaningless holding patterns until their fuel tanks ran dry. The regime's command architecture had suffered a complete lobotomy. The wall had fallen, and the adversary had never confirmed a single genuine target. 0630 hours. First light over the narrow passage. Smoke from the fires at the coastal naval installations merges with the morning haze, but the operational map at the combatant command headquarters is now a clean sheet. In fewer than 3 hours, the Revolutionary Naval Guard, as a coherent fighting force, has ceased to exist. The remnants of their coastal defense missiles, vaporized in the atmosphere by kinetic naval interceptors, are now little more than aluminum particulate drifting over the water. The so-called impregnable barrier was not torn down by brute force. It was disassembled, component by component, through a sequenced cascade of engineering that the adversary's decision cycle was fundamentally incapable of processing. The preliminary damage assessment reads as a textbook in surgical precision. Thanks to the cryptographic keys provided by Allied intelligence services, the integrated naval combat system didn't merely repel the attack, it redefined the regional balance of power. The stricken tanker has been stabilized. Its cargo remains intact, protected by a sanitized corridor where hours earlier a killing zone existed. The strategic reality for challengers of the international order is stark. The regime can attempt to procure replacement radar systems and reconstruct its mountain tunnels, but it can never recover the 4 decades of accumulated strategic surprise that it squandered in a single miscalculation. They have learned the foundational lesson of modern conflict. Possessing the weapon is irrelevant if the adversary holds the source code of your entire belief system. This was not a battle for territory. It was a demonstration of the engineering of victory. While the world awakens to wire service headlines about a skirmish in the Strait, inside Allied command centers, the assessment is something else entirely. For the regime, it was the end of an era. For the fleet, it was simply another routine rotation. Never challenge those who write the rules of the spectrum.